If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
We have another equitana educator on our show today. This time it's Dr. Shelley Appleton. So Shelley is the owner of Calm, Willing, Confident Horses. And we're going to talk to her in a minute about tips on getting on with the horse. But before we do that, I'd just like to remind you that for people who would like to work in the horse industry but they're not sure where to start, then have a chat to the friendly team at internationalhorsecollege.com. Within the wide variety of horse courses from the complete beginner or for the complete beginner to qualified professionals with students in over 20 countries, International Horse College will be able to consider your individual requirements and guide you in the right direction, which could include RPL or recognition of prior learning. Simply go to internationalhorsecollege.com now to start the conversation. Now, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Dr. Shelley Appleton. She's a horse trainer, coach, educator, author, and podcast presenter. She's a skilled horse trainer who holds a PhD in human learning and the development of expertise. And this is probably particularly what we want to drill into today. And she applies these insights to help people understand and develop their mastery in horsemanship or horse mastership. Shelley, are you there?
I am.
Welcome to Horse Chats.
Yeah, thank you, Glenys. Thank you so much for having me on.
Shelley, just to get to know you a little bit better, but do you have a favourite quote or something you say to yourself all the time, something you say to others, something that just instills in you your direction and where you're going?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, my favourite quote actually comes from Maya Angelou. She's an American poet, actress. She did lots of things, but her famous quote is that I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I think this is so deep when you go into horses, but also people learning how to work horses really well, is that how you make someone feel or a horse feel or that person feel that you're coaching has very deep ramifications.
Yeah, totally agree with you, particularly considering not just people but horses.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I like it because horses learn, we develop a form of touch communication with them. So, not only do we make them feel certain things, because all horses can really do is interpret the reality from how they're feeling. And we actually communicate with them through touch in a lot of times, especially when we're riding them. So, yeah, horses will never forget how one person feels to the other. And that's an important thing to remember when we work with them, is that we all feel different to a horse.
Shelley, tell us a little bit about your PhD. You did specific human learning and the development of expertise. Tell us a bit about how you came into that field and why this particular PhD.
Yeah, well, I actually have a 25-year career in academia at university. I'm a pharmacist, and I was a university academic in the School of Pharmacy, teaching pharmacists and other health science students. And when I started off my research in drugs in sport, and then my supervisor actually retired. So it kind of left me in a little bit of a quandary, and I'd won a number of teaching awards. So at the time, the university and the government as well was putting a lot of emphasis and funding into increasing the kind of education and teaching and learning expertise within departments and staff. So because I had performed so well at teaching, they kind of steered me in that direction. So I was sponsored by my university to actually complete my master's in education and then to actually do a PhD looking at the development of expertise, because we were building health professionals, so looking in medical education. So that's where it all came about. That's what my background is. And you might think that's really weird because I'm now a horse trainer and coaching people. Well, it came about because teaching horses, training horses was just kind of like it was something that was very personal to me, my own kind of personal journey. And I just was someone that used to was the equivalent of someone that tinkered with cars in the garage on the weekend, but I would just unpick horses. I did it for fun. I was very focused initially on being very good as a competitor in dressage. And then it just went from just being very curious because I had this background in learning, and then suddenly the worlds of my horse world and my research world kind of collided. And so I got very fascinated by it. And then one day I helped a friend, and then it snowballed out of control. So at one stage I was working full time. I was doing my PhD in part time. I was working full time, studying part time, and then I also had a part time business where I trained horses, I coached people, and I gave clinics around Australia. And I think there was 1 year I had 1 day off. And yeah, so that's what happened. It's like my side hustle, which was my horse training business, just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to give it a crack. So I completely transitioned over and I haven't looked back.
It is the ideal way then, didn't you? You know, like that side hustle, you know, that bit of straddling between your side hustle and your side hustle.
Yeah. So it just made, I was very, very lucky to do that because I was able to ascertain I could make a living out of it before I kind of switched over. Plus also very, very lucky that I've still got that in my background. So I've got this flexible ability to have a career. But this is my purpose. My horse work is the most important to me.
I don't know if that's luck, you know, having a part-time that then develops into full-time. Is it luck or is it really planning?
Yeah, I think I remember I read this blog once, and it was a really, really cool blog that I wrote. And it said, in your life, you most likely will have a job, right? If you're lucky, you'll have a career. And if you're absolutely blessed, you'll find your devotion. And it's like, well, I was super lucky that I was able to have a career that I did really enjoy. I did really enjoy my time in academia. However, I found the thing that I was most devoted by, the thing that actually gives me a sense of meaning and purpose. And what I feel, if I had to summarize that for you, Glenys, I'd say what I feel like I do is I hand back people's joy into their horse ownership, because a lot of times people can get a little bit stuck with a horse. And they, not only that, when they get stuck, there's a whole lot of ramifications to that. They can feel guilty and shame and stress. And not only that, it just becomes so unenjoyable. And I love being able to hand that back to them and hand back their hobby, because we might have jobs and careers and even devotions, but you need a hobby. It's your hobby that kind of balances you. And horses, for many people, is their hobby. It's what they do as, you know, what's meant to be fun in their life. So I love giving that back to people.
Now, today you're going to talk to us about 10 tips that people get on with their horse. Everyone wants to get on with their horse, but these 10 tips are going to, if they're not getting on with their horse or they feel like they've lost a bit of the trust, a bit of connection, this is going to help them. And if they are, then that should deepen this connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it's all about, because we've got to remember, we've got to form a partnership with a horse, and how good that partnership will be will depend on the relationship, the quality of the relationship that kind of sits underneath that, and people's ability to be able to make sure that you're developing the partnership of who does what and who does what role within you and the horse, and then the quality of this relationship towards, between both of you. So I've got 10 tips. Would you like me to go through them?
Absolutely. What's the first one?
The first one is when you're establishing a partnership, which the partnership has to come first, because it's from your partnership that the relationship quality will be established. There has to be kind of a point. There has to be something that starts as the focus that a relationship comes by. So to actually establish that partnership is that you must try to find a nice, safe place, a nice, safe environment with good facilities. That's a really important thing to have. So I like, having a good space to ride. And of course, you can do it in a paddock and things like that. But geez, it's really an advantage if you've got like an arena with a good surface or a round yard, and other facilities like that can really help maximize. I do work with people all the time, and those people that are a little bit stuck, they've only got a paddock on a hill, that kind of course you can do it. But I tell you what, by having really good facilities or access to facilities, that really does give you a real shot in the arm. So that's a benefit. My next one is very important, which is the horse's soundness, and if they're lame. And, we don't understand that a horse can be lame or unsound, but they don't have to limp. You can't always tell. If lameness, just say, is the horse has sore feet, so all 4 feet are sore, they won't limp. Most people won't see it. Or if their lameness is up high on their back or at a higher joint or in the neck, they might not necessarily limp. People are good at seeing a horse that's limp or stepping short or moving a bit awkward, but people are not so good at picking soundness issues that are more insidious because you can't see them. And I'll tell you this now, Glenys, I have never met a difficult or tricky horse that hasn't ended up having a soundness issue. Even those horses that I've turned around that were quite tricky, it's kind of like a difficult thing to find out down the track. They actually did have something that was motivating them to struggle and be reluctant to take on board. And it all makes sense when you see it, and then you realize you've made that horse suck it up. So I'm very good at picking that these days. And how I picked it up just very quickly is that I got very proficient at training horses, and I came across a horse that was tricky. And that horse, that mare, took me down a rabbit hole when I was thinking, okay, that method doesn't work. And I started getting into things and looking at it. And I'm really appreciative of that because I got to do a lot of exploring with her, but it ended up being some hock injections and some Penazan completely changed her. So it wasn't that the approach I was using was wrong. It's just that the beautiful horse was uncomfortable doing what I asked her to do. So she was uncomfortable. So, when I was working her, it was uncomfortable. So she was emotional.
Yep.
And she got anxious. And that is a big problem that people have. They try to form a relationship with a horse that is actually physically struggling to do what they're asking them to do. And the horse is being emotional or anxious or difficult or reluctant, having these behavioural problems. But it's because there's a problem. Yeah.
Now, you talk about the Pareto principle.
Yeah, the Pareto principle. Yeah, I'll talk about this at Equitana. It's also known as the 20-80 rule, which means that with any skill, with any job, just say your expertise, 20% of the skills you've developed or learnt for that job, you use 80% of the time. So my philosophy is, and what I've, through exploration and discovery, that if I teach people and get them very proficient with 22 things, that's all it is, 22 things, 23 skills that start in the round yard and some groundwork and then some particular riding skills of putting a foundation on a horse, basically the skills that you use to start a horse from the ground up. If I teach people those skills, I set them up for life. So it sets them up. If you understand the horses, how to put a foundation on a horse and those skills, you can put any horse on a horse float, so you never get in a problem there. Make sure that they're able to control their speed, if, not too fast, not too slow. And you're able to make really important judgments about the advice you're getting from others. So you can really protect that horse's foundation, because problems with horses, behavioural problems, are normally the root cause of that is some issue or glitch that's gone wrong with a foundation response, whether it be forward or stop or contact issues or whatever. It all sits in the foundation. I hand people those skills, they've got influence over those particular aspects of the horse. So that's powerful. My next point is look at ourselves. And it goes back to that quote of how you make a horse feel at the start, that Maya Angelou quote, is look for yourself. The fitter you are and the greater your core strength, the better load you are to carry. Because we sit on horses and we don't understand. They're not designed to be sit on, or nature hasn't designed them to be sat on. So we've got to be the best load to carry. And therefore, that's really important. So I did a few experiments working with people's confidence. And one thing I do recommend is doing Pilates. And it's really interesting as you track people's Pilates progress and how, they feel they're developing in that with their perception of their confidence improving. And it actually lines up. So I always say to people that something you can do off the horse that will do wonders to your confidence is actually to focus on your core strength. So look at yourself.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense, I think. And introducing another skill like Pilates, there's actually a couple of practical Pilates. Is it Helen Fletcher? I had a chat to her yesterday, and she's got some practical Pilates that she's doing at Equitana. You've got to book in first, though. Book in early. And,
yes, I think Mel McCauley might be there as well. Strong Stable. She is absolutely fabulous as well. So,
the integration of the two, isn't it?
Yeah. So absolutely.
What have you got next? What's the next one?
Oh, my next one, yes. Your tack has to fit. Because you can do the greatest training in the world. You can be the greatest horse rider in the world. You can be in the greatest facility and everything amazing. But if your saddle is uncomfortable on that horse's back, good luck. Because again, you're making that horse feel uncomfortable. You are not going to have a good partnership or a relationship. So tack that fits is very important. And that, of course, goes to your bit and everything like that. Number 7 is work your horse regularly. This is very important. It's important for the horse's training to have that consistency of encounter with you that helps develop this way of being with you, but also for the horse's fitness and their own core strength and things like that. A horse standing in the paddock, we might look at that and think, well, the horse doesn't care whether we don't ride it. The only thing is a horse just in a small paddock that's not moving as nature intended, that's like a sedentary lifestyle for us. And what you see they lose their muscles, they lose their glutes, they lose their quads, and they lose their core strength. And those are so important for carrying us comfortably in the saddle. So working the horse regularly is important for their fitness and their core strength and their overmusculature. And they're all things that if that declines, then again, you become uncomfortable. It becomes uncomfortable to do what you want it to do. And then your partnership and your relationship goes down the tube. Yeah. My next thing is, and I call it this, I say you've got to imprint your signature on a horse. Now, what I mean by that is people don't realize, and I know that for, the first 20 years of my life, I had no idea that the way that you communicate with a horse, you actually establish and teach them. And they're actually responding to feelings that you convey to them. So if you're leading them, they're feeling the halter. If you're sitting on the back, they're feeling the bit, or you in the saddle, or your legs at their side, and they're learning to interpret that. But the thing is that we don't appreciate is that we all feel different to a horse. We're all different weights, heights. We all touch slightly differently. Now, some horses are good at being able to adapt to and work out the differences between how people feel and not be so worried about it. But a lot of horses are actually horses that are really need that specific. It's like it's different. And that's why you'll get that horse that can be ridden by one person and the horse goes fabulously. And another rider can get on that's just as good as rider, but the horse will be anxious. And the reason being is those riders feel slightly different. And that difference in feeling, between the two horses, between the horses, the horse with the two riders, it's been triggered by that slight differences. And that difference creates a little bit of concern for them. They're not so sure. So what I say is I'm an advocate for when you get a new horse is to imprint your signature on it. Now, what that means is you've got to teach the horse how you engage with it, down to just handling. How do you lead? Teach them. How do you put them on a horse float, or how do you get them up to the mounting block? And be conscious that you actually have to teach them your way. And that really, instead of just assuming they know, it's identifying that and showing them. And that really supercharges your partnership and your relationship being really positive. My next advice is to touch as many horses as you can. It's an advice I give people, because the more horses you touch, like just say with me, the more horses I worked with, the more and easily I was able to adapt to each horse and to identify slight differences, or to identify if they didn't understand something or whatever. So I always say, touch as many horses as you can, because then the differences between how horses feel are less confronting for you, but also makes you better to adapt to that horse to be able to communicate with them. My next advice is, if I can give one piece of advice to anyone, my number one advice is to get on well with a horse, or to ride well, or to increase the safety of your ride or enjoyment of your ride, is to look up and ride somewhere. That is a powerful, powerful thing. The man that really helped create me is a man called Gary Woolaway, and he was an exceptional horseman. And in the early days, I did notice that, he would ride a horse and it was, he could ride it through fire and the horse was very happy and relaxed. I get on the horse and it wasn't so much. It was, I'd always have to work that little bit harder. And I would just want to know, what was the difference between him and me? I was a good rider. He was a good rider. What was the difference? And it all came down to, I asked him one day, I said, what do you do? What do you think when you ride? And I remember him looking at me kind of like, huh? That's a weird question. But bless him, his kindness, he worked it out. And he said, well, I'm riding over there. That's all he thought. One single thought in his head was where he was riding. And then I realized what I was doing was all this kind of micromanaging, over analyzing of the horse and thinking how I was going to fix it and all these types of things. I was worried there, so I'm going to do this. Anyway, then I just emptied my mind and I looked up and I just started looking and only focusing where I was riding, and everything changed. Like, it's a powerful, powerful piece of advice, that. So look up and ride somewhere. And then finally, Glenys, your community, the people you hang around are absolutely vital to your success with horses. Are they people that kind of drain you or pain you or toxic too? Because there's a lot of that can go on, that try to either keep you down or snuffle you out or make you feel criticized or give you unsolicited advice all the time. Or are those people that just embrace everything? And, those people, like, I love those communities that organize events and encourage you to come to, riding clubs and come along to this and be part of that and really embrace you. Like, they're really, really special people that don't judge you. If you want to go have a try at another sport, they're like cheering you on. They're not criticizing you or anything like that. They're encouraging you. They're encouraging and sharing more so than giving you unsolicited advice. So that's the most important thing, really.
All right, so you're going to talk in a lot more, the 23 things or 22 things.
22 things, yeah. So I've identified 22 things. It's only 22 things. Like, what I worked out is just be able to teach a horse just 22 things, and some of them are very easy. It's all pretty straightforward. If I can teach people these 22 things and get them to do it at a really, to be able to train a horse to a really nice level, like just say backing a horse up. If you can back a horse up using a simple technique and get the horse to do it really beautifully, that is just as good as knowing 50 groundwork exercises that are complicated. So if I can just teach people the 22 things, and it changes everything.
Mm-hmm. So just to do with the backup, or the rein back. Are you teaching the rein back, or you're teaching people that once your horse understands this, then that's one of the 22 things?
Yeah, so it's a combination. It involves how do you teach it, and then how do you know it's doing it well? So it's being able to look at yourself, okay, and then how the horse is performing it. And that's crucial, because really a horse is the quality. The horse will be impacted by the person hanging onto the lead rope or the person sitting in the saddle. It'll be a reflection of that. So that's why I use my human learning expertise, which is so important. Everyone looks at horses and horse problems, but really the barrier to the horse will always be the human that has to communicate to it. So if I focus on teaching the person really well, then, that's what I try to bring to the industry, is that focus on human learning, because, you might be a really good horse trainer or instructor or whatever like that, but it doesn't mean to say that you're really understanding the human that is sitting in the saddle or on the end of the lead rope.
Now, those 20, did you say 22, 23?
Yep. There's 22 things, yeah.
Yep. If people would like to know a bit more about that, are you doing that at Equitana or?
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about that in the Pareto principle, which is what I'm going to be talking about, that 20% of skills which you use 80% of the time. So my process of how I identified what they were for me. And the other talk I'm doing is on confidence and trust, because confidence and trust and how to build that in people, it's also related to those 22 things. It's the individual. What I see confidence and trust is a factor of how competent you feel being able to reliably handle that horse. It's a combination of feeling of competency and reliability or trust within yourself or the horse. And people can have different kind of, for instance, you might someone that's quite confident in an arena, but when they go out on the trail, their confidence disappears because they don't feel competent or reliable that their horse will be, they'll be able to control their horse in that uncontrollable environment outside of the arena. So that's my second talk. So my first talk's actually on confidence and trust. The second one is on Pareto principle.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, for people who can't get to Equitana, not all our listeners are going, are you happy to come back and talk to us a bit more about that after Equitana?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Equitana, and I love just being able to see everyone else who's presenting and meeting people. But absolutely, I'd love to talk to you more.
All right then. Now, is there anything else that we should have talked about that we didn't? Any other questions that I should have asked you, but I haven't asked you yet?
No, I suppose it's only how people can find out more about me or, where to read, because I'm quite a prolific kind of writer and sharer and things like that. What I've done, Glenys, is that I was just your quintessential amateur rider. I had a career, I had my weekly dressage lessons, and then I met a horse that turned me inside out. And I set about trying to fix him for 7 years until I realized it was me. And then as I learnt, I just shared it. And then I found this swamping of my siloed world of what I knew about and the horse and how it learnt and went. And so what I've done, I've shared a lot about what that was, because I know I have a lot of empathy for people because they're just like me. I've been there. I know what it's like to not know things and to know that you've got to learn things in layers.
And those details, of course, our regular listeners know, is that they'll go to horsechats.com and it's got a really good search on it. And what they'll do is they'll search for Shelley or search for Appleton and they'll find our chat. And every chat has a page, and then at the bottom of the page, we'll have all your contact details. Do you prefer phone, email, text?
I prefer email, yes. People go to my website, they'll be able to hit the contact me and they'll be able to see that. I'm on my social media links, etc. But podcasts like what you're doing with Horse Chats, that's so important for sharing good ideas. So, yeah, that's very good.
Great. All right, thanks, Shelley. We're looking forward to having you back and providing some more information for our listeners.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Shelley. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you've enjoyed this chat, then please comment, rate and subscribe. If you'd like any changes or recommendations for guests, then please contact us through horsechats.com. And while you're online, have a look at the government-accredited courses at internationalhorsecollege.com. Registered Training Organisation 31352.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.